Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to another weekly wrap up here at the Book Refuge. This week is week 28 of 2022 and I am still kind of mid book slump. I put up a video just for channel members earlier this week kind of talking about where my slump has come from, and I want to film a video soon for you guys too that will go over that, but you know, me being in a book slump is still reading 9 books in a week, so I shouldn't complain too much because it's really not that bad at all. But when I'm used to reading 15 to 20 books a week, it still feels like I'm stuck or something like that. But that's okay. It was an interesting week. There was definitely some ups and downs. Sorry. First time talking in the morning. So it'll still be an interesting wrap up, that's for sure. First off, as always, I want to thank my patrons and channel members for the support that they give me. I've been doing this full time for 3 months now, and during the summer is actually more slowed down than you would think, just because, you know, people are living their lives. They're not watching TV all the time or YouTube all the time, which is good for them. But I do have some new people to welcome into the family here. So I want to thank my new channel members, Melody, who is a good friend. Mel Binds Fix is her name on Instagram. And, you know, she's a great supporter of the channel with the wonderful things she has sent me. And the fanfics she has bound are absolutely amazing. You should go follow her on Instagram for sure. And then and she joined at the Faded Friend level. And I believe I'm pronouncing this right. Please forgive me. I think it's Deidre or Deidre. And they joined at the dedicated diva level. So I apologize again if I mispronounced that, but I believe that's the name we're going with. It is a beautiful name either way. And then we have 2 new patrons to the channel to welcome, and we have Shannon Kay and Megan Cowles. Thank you both for supporting me here and helping me to do this full time, because wow, what a crazy world it is. But let's go ahead and dive right into the books. And I'm bringing my notes up over here. Let me turn that around. And we'll go through that. Also, I did turn the air conditioning off to film because even with a microphone, it bothers me, the sound that it makes, but it gets hot in here really fast. So that's another reason why I'm trying to film shorter videos for the times when I have the air turned off. Because like I have a fan, but then it's a whole thing. Anyway, we're going to dive in. So the first book we have to talk about is one of my rereads. Oops, where did I put it? Oh, I didn't grab it. But guess what? I have a copy of it right here too. And it's the pretty one because it has a step back. But I did my reread of Always Practice Safe Hex. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? This is my signed copy that I got from Juliet, which wasn't the exact copy I was rereading, but I annotated a copy for patrons, and very much loved rereading this. This was a 6-star book for me. I love how much attention that the Stay a Spell series has been getting lately. I know a lot of friends got to meet Juliet at Book Bonanza, where she was signing books, and she really is such a sweetie. So this is book 4 in the Stay a Spell series. This one is about Lily and Gareth. This is an enemies to lovers between a witch and a Grimm. I won't tell you what a Grimm is because it's kind of a big secret in the series, but they end up actually working on a project together for this like marketing company, and they've had this crazy sexual tension between them for a while, and Gareth finally kind of throws the gauntlet down and he's like, you're going to be in my bed soon. It's going to happen. And he goes about pursuing Livy. And I love their banter. I love their sexual chemistry. I love the soft underbelly of Gareth, and his heart is... Juliet is so good at having her alpha men just have this soft, squishy center that just touches me in such a beautiful way. So it's always a treat when I get to reread my favorites for my patrons, and oh my gosh, it just brings me so much joy. There's no other way to say it. It brings me so much joy. So very much enjoyed rereading this book. This book does have a trigger warning for assault, attempted assault. Well, attempted sexual assault, but I mean, she does get physically assaulted by the person, so that happens. But this is a 6-star read for me, and this is 4 on my spice scale for sure. All right, then I read one of the books on my TBR for this month, and that is Professor Daddy by B.B. Hamel. I was just trying to read some books to really like break up my, like I said, I've been trying to break out of this slump, and Professor Daddy was a fun, spicy, about novella length book. B.B. Hamel has this whole series that is something Daddy, and so like there's Professor Daddy, Dr. Daddy, Dad's best friend Dad, no, I don't know. But this one actually, it had a very light daddy kink in it. So if you don't know if you like that, or if you're uncomfortable if it gets too much, really the daddy kink in this is really relegated to the bedroom and him wanting to be called daddy and then wanting to take care of her. So if you're interested in trying it but don't know if you'll like it. Also, everyone is, I think she's like 20. The heroine is in STEM actually, and she's going to a tech school to become like a coder. And she's only one of 3 women in her class, like in her graduating class. And the hero, whose name is, I think it's Jason. Yeah, his name is Jason. He is a business owner and a tech genius, and he will, once a semester, I think, teach a class at this college, as well as he's looking for recruits for his company. And him and Clara, they're kind of drawn to each other right away. He's teaching to this room. She's the only woman in it. And they end up having a fling together. And it's pretty hot. It was pretty hot. So it was, it's a little ridiculous. I'm not afraid to say that. So I gave it 3.5 stars, and it's a 3.5 on my spice scale. And then, mild daddy kink, if that's a trigger warning, or maybe that's a green light for you, So then next, I finished Persuasion by Jane Austen, and I actually have a whole video about this, so I won't talk too much. There's 2 videos including me about this, because this was a bonus Rake Appreciation Society video. If you don't know, I have a monthly book club with my bookish bestie, Crystal, from Crystal's Bookish Life, and we read historical romance once a month. And we decided, she decided, she asked me, and I was like, heck yes. And along with a couple of our other friends, we did a read along with this, and then we just had our live show the other day. So if I remember, I'll link that up there where we talked about the book. And then I have a review and vlog of this that I just put out the other day, which when you're seeing this will have been like yesterday, where I review this and the Netflix film that just came out, which was part of the reason why we were reading this, because Persuasion, Netflix did a version of Persuasion. So if you'd like to know my full thoughts, check out those videos. I don't really rate this video. We talk about it in the video, but like I don't really rate classics because they're not my normal enjoyment level of what I'm looking for. I can't really hold them against my normal standard, which, as you know, highly has to do with enjoyment and how I'm feeling. And though this wasn't unenjoyable, this wasn't necessarily a thrilling story. I highly recommend you watch our live show. It's only about an hour, because Crystal, she loves Jane Austen work, like, very much, and she has done a lot of, like, I don't want to call, like, she's done a lot of research and listened to a lot of podcasts and knows more of the history of Jane and, like, what was going on when this book was written, because this is actually a contemporary romance. I know people, this was a contemporary story of, like, the classes and what was going on at the time. All of Jane Austen's works are that. But this one specifically was because it's set in 1818, which is when she was, like, writing it too. So anyway, definitely check this out. I don't have a rating or a spice scale for this, but I did read it and it was a good experience. And my heart is still firmly with the 2007 version of Persuasion that the BBC did. Is fantastic, so I highly recommend it. And in case some people were wondering, this is the Penguin Classics cloth-bound edition of Persuasion, if you would like it, because I've had people ask me. Okay, then I read Tease by Melanie Harlow. This book actually just came out, but I was able to get a physical copy of it early because Melanie put it up for order before the ebook went live, so people could get it before Book Bonanza. And this is book 3 in the Cloverleaf second generation, or else it's book 8, depending on how you want to look at it. This one is about Felicity McAllister, who is one of Mac and Franny's daughters. One of the other books in the series is about one of those daughters too. And then Hutton French, who is the son of the characters from the French series, I think is what it's called. The French series. Yeah, it was right. I have only read one of those books, so I didn't know the parents of this one. But he is a tech genius billionaire. He has anxiety, actually. He has OCD, pretty high levels of anxiety, and he's very socially awkward because of that. But he's a billionaire. He's a hunk. He has dated lots of women, but mostly for short periods of time because commitment is tough for him. And then we have Felicity, who is trying to get her vegan catering business off the ground, and she's having some struggles with that. And when she goes to a high school reunion, which Hutton refuses to go to because he's like, I don't owe these people anything, even though he would be the most successful person from their graduating year. And then Felicity gets in over her head with a mean girl, and she says that I am actually engaged. I'm engaged to Hutton French. We've been friends our whole lives, and we're engaged. And so then she has to beg Hutton to come, and she's like, you don't have to talk, just be there and look broody. And he agrees to be her fake fiance, and then he's like, well, how about we do this for a little while? Because here's the thing, they both actually are in love with each other. This is a mutually pining situation. And since she has set it up so beautifully for them to be fake engaged, they decide to go along with it for a while to help her get more business for her catering. And him, because now he gets to spoil her and treat her like his actual fiance without actually having to take it seriously that he's in love with her. So you maybe can tell by the way I'm explaining this that I didn't have a lot of time for this hero, okay? I appreciate the anxiety rep, I absolutely do. But I'm not a huge fan of in a romance, and this is my personal opinion. I have read quite a few books at this point where the heroes or the heroines have anxiety. But I don't appreciate when when their issues or when their struggles are completely the reason that they don't go for someone, because I think it's kind of disrespectful to people who have anxiety or, OCD or those things, that would be the only reason that they're not able to make something work, particularly with someone who's their best friend and knows all these things about them. And, it just bothered me. And then the other thing that bothered me about this is Felicity hears these rumors that Hutton is kinky, that he's a dominant in the bedroom, that has gotten spread out there from women who have dated him and from gossip columns and things like that. And he is a dominant. And he teases that to her, and she's kind of turned on by it. And then there is literally one scene of BDSM in here, and it is the most vanilla shit that I've ever read. Melanie Harlow has had better BDSM aspects in books where the hero isn't known for it. So I was, to say the least, very let down with literally the tease. That's the thing, is I was like, is she trying to make this a double-edged thing? That it's a tease, that he doesn't actually do that with her, even though she's into it. And when they try it, it's the best sex they've ever had. And then it just disappears from the story. So y'all know how I feel about that. I don't like being lady blue-balled by things. And I don't like when heroes hurt their heroines the way this happened when they're best friends. That's part of the reason why Friends to Lovers is a tough one for me. I love it when it's done well, but when I hate it, it's because you care about this person more than anyone. You should be kinder to them than an enemies to lovers relationship. You know what I mean? In an enemies to lovers, when they have a misunderstanding, I understand it. Because it's these people that previously hated each other who are now maybe, whether it's a fake dating or it's an arranged marriage or any of that, it's understandable that they would have a misunderstanding because they hated each other 2 weeks ago. These people have been best friends since they were teenagers, and they're hurting each other with miscommunication. And it's not that it can't happen. It's not that it can't. But I just get even more frustrated when it's a friends to lovers, because I'm like, you too, who are socially awkward and it's difficult for you to talk to people, but it's your best friend and you've proven that you can talk to them. So I don't know. It's just a setup of a couple that will never fully make sense to me, because I'm like, don't have them have been best friends and then have them hurt each other this way. because it's like, I can buy that from enemies to lovers, but when it's friends to lovers, it would be much more difficult for me to forgive the person. So I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars, and it was a 2.5 on the Steam scale. And literally my any reason not to recommend: promised kink and very little follow through. I was disappointed. She had better rope and bondage in other books that she's done. Just saying. Okay, then I read Bad for the Boss by Talia Hibbert. And this book was bonkers. Okay, this book was bonkers. I loved it because this was a Black woman, Asian man romance. It's an age gap. It's a curvy, luscious Black heroine. She is fantastic. And her name is Jennifer. If I can tell you how much I love when a heroine's name is Jennifer, I actually really like it. Some people can throw them out of it, but there's a book, side note, there's a book by Serena Ackroyd where the heroine's name is Jennifer, and when the hero is dirty talking to her, he's calling her Jennifer, and it's one of my favorite narrators who does it, and I was just like, ah. Anyway, so this is a little novella length. This was totally bonkers. There was so much going on in this book, okay? But I had a fun time. So remember that when I tell you what my rating was. Like, I still had a very fun time with this during a week where reading was causing me a lot of trouble. I had a fun time with this. But it's an older hero. He's a silver fox. He's half Chinese. He's the boss. But, like, she doesn't work directly for him. She works for someone else, so it's like her boss's boss. And she accidentally writes an email to her friend who has a similar last name as the hero. And, you know, if you've ever worked in a big company where, like, all the email addresses are saved, you know, in Microsoft or in Outlook, and you pick the wrong person, that has happened to me when I worked at Microsoft. But anyway, super awkward for our poor heroine because she is complaining to her friend about a little bit of sexual harassment that she's been experiencing at work. So she accidentally sends this to her boss's boss, and he responds with kind of a witty comeback, and then he's like, "Who's harassing you?" You know, he's a little upset. And she, like, messages back, and she's like, "Oh, no, it's nothing I can handle. I promise it's not that bad. I'm so sorry that I accidentally emailed you with this. I apologize." And he's like, "You really should go to HR if someone's bothering you." And she's like, no. Well, then the next day, he actually he calls her into his office, and she's super nervous. She's going to be in trouble for messing this up. And he instead is trying to find out who harassed her. And that interaction ends with him fingering her on his desk because they're both very attracted. He does make it very clear. He's like, "I super want to fuck you." Just saying that. But I realize, like, he realizes the irony of the situation. And she's like, "Yeah, I want you too." So yeah, he finger fucks her on his desk. And then he becomes kind of obsessed with her. Now, the way that this became too much is this is a very short book. Like I said, it's under 200 pages. Very quick story. And the heroine is also being stalked. She has someone who is coming after her, and then she has that bit of harassment that's happening in the office, and now she has this stuff going on with her boss. So there's a lot of story happening. This is also, of course, very accelerated romance stuff happening, but it was very hot. One of the things I love about Talia Hibbert's reading, I've read a few of her books, is the way that she writes fat bodies and makes it clear that this isn't just curvy, like that this heroine is fat. And she doesn't hate herself for being fat. She's a little shy around this hunk of a man who wants her. But just how she describes the body, like, there's this sex scene in here where she's riding him, and it says he grabbed her plump, fat ass. Like, literally says, like, he loved her fat ass. Like, I'm sorry, I like when fat is used in that kind of way, where it's just like, it is, and it isn't a slur, and it isn't a, like, her thinking badly of herself. He literally is, like, smacking her fat ass, and he's like, I love it. Because, yeah, as someone who's plus size and has been, there are a lot of times where I'm just like, this is my fat. It's there. It's not always a condemnation, and for some people, that wouldn't do well for them. Like, there's a lot of reviews reviewing this book badly, and I definitely think there's reason for critique. But for me, this was just bonkers. It also was really hot. I also liked that it was an older silver fox, Asian man, and this young, sexy, fat Black woman. I enjoyed that. But as I said, This was a 3-star for me with a 3 on the spice scale. And there was boss employee dynamics for trigger warnings. There's kidnapping, there's fat phobic slurs, not from the hero. There is murder and stalking. So there are a lot of trigger warnings for this tiny little book. And so I understand why it wouldn't necessarily work. But I had a great time. Talia Hibbert writes a good story. It's great. Okay. Then I finished Rune of Roses, which I won't be talking about here because this is the Patreon exclusive book of the month. So if you would like to know my thoughts on this, and I'll tell you a teeny little sneak peek in just a second, you can join my Patreon at the $7 or higher level. I do exclusive reviews once a month. You get to help me pick the book, and then I do an exclusive review just for you. And boy, y'all, this one's going to be a doozy. Then what I do is when I post that review for them, everyone who comments on that video gets entered into a drawing to win this actual copy, where I have written my thoughts, a lot of it very angry, because I don't know what the fuck this book was. Like I said, I won't be going into detail here, but I gave this book 2.5 stars. It was barely a 2 on the spice scale. There was a lot of naughty words and a lot of sex acts happening, but not many of them were actually between the main characters of this book. I did not know when this one was picked that the whole series is about the same couple. I wasn't mentally prepared for that. So this book had a cliffhanger, as well as I was very disappointed in the content. So if you would like my scathing review, you can check out my Patreon down below and join that. This video will be up in the coming week, and oh boy, do I have some things to say about it. Okay, then I finished The Contract by Melanie Moreland. This is the first book in like the Contract series. This is a series that like there's like 2.5 books in it, and it is about the same couple, but I knew that going into it. Also, this could read as a standalone because the subsequent books I think are just about the couple figuring out their lives and stuff like that. But anyway, this is about Katie, who is Richard's assistant, and Richard is a total asshole, okay? Completely an asshole. He is a horrible boss for her, and Katie has a lot on her plate, and she needs this job. This job pays her very well, and so she has just put up with him for a year. She's just put up with him being a horrible boss, and she does her job to the best of her ability. And then our hero, this book, I listened to the audio. This book is 99% told from his point of view. Melanie Moreland does do that with a couple books of hers that I've read. So there's a heroine's point of view, but we mostly are getting the heroes. And he decides he wants to leave his current employer because they are pissing him off for some reason, and he decides to go to a competitor. But to get hired at this competitor, he needs to be seen as a stand-up guy. He's not really a stand-up guy. He's kind of sleazy, kind of not great. And so he decides that the way to win over this company and have them love him is to have the reason he left his job be because he was in love with his secretary, and he couldn't stay at that job if he wanted to be with her, if he wanted to be engaged to her. So he writes up a contract and convinces Katie that he will pay her very well if she will pretend to be his fiance for a certain amount of time, and then eventually like his wife, so that he can be with his company, and then once it's going well, then they can break up, and he'll be heartbroken that his love left him. He thinks he has this all figured out. Number one, this plot, very convoluted. Number two, I did not know how this hero was going to win me over, okay? I was told by a couple of my friends that they really loved this, and I'd read the Rev to the Max series. I'd read Into the Storm. I wanted to read more of Melanie Moreland, and this one was on Anyplay, so I was like, I'll give it a try. And I was nervous for a while. This book took me a while to finish because I listened to the first like half of it actually when I was getting my teeth done the other day. And I was like, I don't know how I feel about this hero. I don't know if we're going to be friends. I don't know if this is going to work for me. But there's a certain tipping point in the book where something happens to the heroine, something pretty horrible. And the way that the hero reacted, it was it really shifted how I felt about him. And the way that he starts to open up and be like there for her was really beautiful. And his there's grovel happening because he is realizing how horrible he was to this wonderful woman for a year and how much he was like not about people. He learns a lot of that through this company he works at. They really become his family. And it's something I've pointed out in every Melanie Moreland I've read. She does found family so well. And she does it on multiple levels in this book. And so when we got to the end of the story, I was like, well, hot damn, I really loved this hero. I really did. Again, my couple little issues with it were that I wish we wouldn't have had any of the heroine's POV, because it was one of those books where, like, the beginning of each chapter says who the chapter's about. So it'll say, chapter 32, Richard, and then it goes. There are 3 chapters from Katie's point of view. So I'm like, why did we even have Katie's point of view? And then have to say, chapter 25, Richard, the whole way through. This was a very tiny issue, but like, we didn't need Katie's point of view. The things that her POV offered were things that we saw happen in Richard's point of view anyway. So I don't know, I didn't need them, but I did enjoy this book, and I gave it 4.5 stars. It was only a 2 on the spice scale though. This was the least amount of steam that I read in a Melanie Moreland book, and it was also very like whimsical sex scenes too, but I enjoyed the book quite a bit. The trigger warning, there is death of a loved one in this one, so there you go. Then last night I finished 2 more books. So I finally read Master of the Mountain by Cherise Sinclair. This was recommended by a viewer. Many of y'all know well, maybe you don't, because people recommend her books to me constantly. I really enjoy Cherise Sinclair. I read her Sons of the Survivalist just recently, and I love that series. I've read some of her Club Shadowlands, and then this one is the first book in the Master of the Mountain, as well as the like Club something series. I can't remember, I didn't write it down. But this one was interesting. So this is about Rebecca, and she goes to this swingers retreat with her boyfriend Matt, because they are boyfriend and girlfriend, but they are not exclusive. And part of the reason they're not exclusive is because Rebecca is very self-conscious about her body. She is overweight, in her eyes at least. And she doesn't feel like she can keep a boyfriend if she tells him he can't also see other people. So he's actually like a swinger, but not because he's not sharing his girlfriend with anyone. He's just able to sleep with whoever. So it's like an open relationship that only benefits Matt. But there you go on this trip together, and she quickly discovers that this trip is not what she thought it was going to be. She's not really comfortable having to watch Matt fuck other people just around here. Now, even though most of these other people they're with, like, they're nice people. They're not all like, you know, creepy or weird or anything, but it's just not what she thought she was getting into, and she's not comfortable. Now, these retreats, there is like swingers who come here, BDSM people, nudists, like all these different people will come to this mountain like retreat, and it is owned by Logan and Jake. And they are, yeah, they're the owners. They both are into BDSM as well, and they've made this kind of safe resort, you know, like there's some cabins and there's a lodge where, you know, sexually explorative people can come there, you know, and there are rooms that have like, you know, some mild BDSM equipment and things like that. And Rebecca ends up stumbling into Logan, and she has nowhere to stay because Matt has brought 2 women back to their cabin, and she has nowhere to stay. And so Logan brings her to his bed to stay, and he gets kind of dom with her. Not kind of dom, very dom with her. And in the beginning, she's very hesitant, so there is a little bit of dubiousness happening, but he can tell she's a submissive. And he's like, well, you're here. If you'd like to experiment with me, we can do that. And so it's not so much revenge against Matt, but she's like, well, I'm here, and why should I just have to watch Matt be with people when I could be with this super hunky dude? So she ends up having this extended trip where she's experimenting and doing things with Logan. Logan does have some PTSD in his past, though. He was a soldier, and so he has some of that baggage as well. This was really great. I love how Cherise Sinclair does intro to like BDSM stuff, and also at the beginning she has a warning. She's like, now my beauties, this has an accelerated timeline. This has a woman trusting a dom way sooner than you ever should, so just know that. But of course I'm telling a story, and we're going to make this be more accelerated. So this was a great recommendation to me. I gave it 4 stars, and it was a 3.5 on the spice scale. The trigger warnings for this are PTSD, and then the heroine does have body image issues quite a bit. And then the last thing that I finished last night was I read the fanfic Far From the Tree by Adiomai. This was also recommended by a viewer. I take recommendations in my book rec form, by the way, which is always down in my description. You can check that out. I regularly read books from that list. I try to read some every single week. This is only my second Drarry fanfic. So it's a Draco and Harry fanfic. And this one involves time travel. And the way that this fic starts is this is an 8th year fic. So everything with Voldemort has finished, and Harry and Draco and Hermione and Ron are all back at Hogwarts. And randomly one day, Potter kids from the future end up at the school. So Lily and James Potter are twins in this fic, and they end up at the school. And so there's, throughout this book, there's this mystery of how these kids got here, when they're, you know, Harry from the future and his partner are going to be back to get them, which we believe is Ginny. We'll just say that. We believe that it's Ginny and Harry that are this couple. So 25 years in the future, their children have ended up back in the past. And so Harry is supposed to stay like away from them so that he doesn't have too much foreknowledge or anything. But Draco actually ends up spending a lot of time with him, and they really like Draco. So that's funny. And then the undertones of this are, well, not the undertones, the romance part of this is that Draco and Harry have like secretly had a thing in the past. And actually back in 5th year, like before stuff got super crazy for Draco, he had actually asked Harry out. He had got up the balls to like ask Harry out, and Harry rejected him, mostly because he thought it was a joke. Like he did not understand that Draco would actually be attracted to him, and so that's been hidden. But recently things have started heating up, and they've started making out in corners and getting each other off and going to the room of requirement to mess around. And now they have kind of this like looming time clock, because they now know that Harry and Ginny are going to get back together one day, because they're currently like not together. They're going to get back together one day and have these twins. And so Draco kind of sees them as a doomed endeavor, but he's like, well, I'm going to take pleasure where I can, while I can. And I'm just going to be happy with it, you know? So yeah, I don't want to spoil anything with this one. I don't know that this one is uber popular, but I have seen bindings of this, which means some significant portion of people like it. But to me, there was a couple of like main issues for me. I go into them a bit more in my Goodreads review actually, but I gave this one 3 stars, and it was only a 2 on the spice scale, which I'm always disappointed when it happens in a fic that is rated explicit and then has pretty vanilla sex scenes. Like the words used were very vanilla, and then there was only a couple actual scenes, and they were very much like, and he fucked him. And like, that's all that was said. And I'm like, I get some people aren't comfortable writing sex, but then don't say that it's explicit, because it wasn't. And when I pick a book that's explicit and it's not, I feel very let down. I feel let down. It's a thing. There's a trigger warning for bullying in this. I'll tell you a couple of the issues so you know. Number one, maybe even from me describing it and using air quotes, you may know one of the secrets, but I won't spoil it. But I will say, when you're reading it, it became extremely obvious to me at about 25% what the big secret was about this book. And that was frustrating. Also, there was a lot of things that drug along. There was a lot of like toxicness, and not in toxic as in like it was super dark and uncomfortable, but there was a lot of like Harry and Draco, mostly Draco very much pushing Harry away, but then still wanting to fuck him, and then he's the only one he can confide in. And Draco's being very much bullied because he's also kind of like forced to be at Hogwarts, because instead of him having to go to Azkaban, he's being forced to like be at Hogwarts for his 8th year and like finish school. And they'll like keep an eye on him while he's there instead of him having to like go to prison. But he's being very much bullied by a lot of the, you know, like people who've lived through this and are like blaming him for everything. They very much are blaming him for everything that's happened. And there are some bullies at Hogwarts now. And that was very frustrating because I feel personally like Harry should have shut that shit down way faster than he did. And like, to think that people wouldn't listen to the Chosen One when he's like, knock the fuck off of Draco, I was getting very irritated. And then the third thing, the ending was way too abrupt. You know, I feel that way with fics a lot of time. Like, they have these brilliant stories that they do all this, and then like they just end. There's not enough epilogue happening, and I'm just like, you put me through an emotional thing, like I need you to like let me down easier. You know, I need some aftercare from this story. So, but I was glad to read another dreary fic, and the person who recommended this one, I have quite a few other recs from them that I'm excited to do. So anyway, those are all the books that I read this week. I told you, even when I have a reading slump, I shouldn't be so hard on myself because I still was able to talk for 40 minutes about books. So yeah, thank you to my channel members and patrons who make this possible for me to do this full time. If you're interested in supporting me in that way and having behind the scenes live chats with me, as well as exclusive content, I have over 10 videos so far that are exclusive to Patreon that you will get immediate access to if you sign up. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.